Hey everybody, I promised you tonight that before we begin Mussar Mondays this week, I want to share with you an incredible story that it blew my mind. I hope it'll blow your mind as well. The story is about a woman who lived in Jerusalem who was extremely wealthy. She was married and she had a pet peeve. And that pet peeve was to take whatever money she had, which was a lot, and give it to institutions that would guarantee the recitation of Kaddish in memory of someone. So if someone passed away, she would give a nice sum of money to a yeshiva or to any Torah institution that would commit to saying Kaddish for people who didn't have someone to say Kaddish for them. This was her project, and she took it upon herself, and sadly one day her husband passed away. She lost her wealth, and she had a few daughters that were getting to the age of marriage. And she asked the yeshivas, the institutions, please don't stop saying Kaddish for the people you're saying Kaddish for. One day I'll get back that money, whatever. But don't stop. It's a tremendous merit to these neshamas, right? Because we know, we've discussed this numerous times, that after we pass on from this world, there's nothing more we can do except for the good deeds that are perpetuated after we pass on our behalf. So if someone does say Kaddish in our memory, right, after one passes, then that continues to be a light. It continues to add to our account in the world to come. If someone supports an institution and that institution continues to do good things, then it continues to be a merit. So this incredible story happened that one day she was walking and she's a little concerned. She has several daughters. They're already getting to the age of marriage, and she's broke. She doesn't have a penny to marry them off. So one day she's walking in the street, and an old man stops her. And the old man in the streets of Jerusalem says to her, I hear of your incredible things that you do, or that you used to do when you had considerable money. And I heard that you have a few daughters that need to get married. How much money do you need to marry them off? So she thinks of how much she believes she would need, and she tells him. She says, I want to help you. He pulls out a check, and he says, you know what? Before I write this check, I want you to get 2 witnesses, because no one's going to believe me. So she runs to a local yeshiva, and she gets 2 yeshiva students. One of them happened to be Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who was one of the great rabbi of Jerusalem. Later he became the great leader of one of the great rabbis in Jerusalem. Was known as a very, very pious man. And incredibly enough, he signs the check, and he tells her, listen to me, you know this and this bank? You go to the bank president and you give him this check. And with these 2 witnesses, he will acknowledge this check. Okay. The next day, she goes with these 2 yeshiva students to the bank. The yeshiva students are waiting in the lobby. She asks to speak to the president, and she gives the president of the bank this check, this pretty large check. And the bank manager faints immediately on the spot. After he sees this check, he faints immediately. Gets back to himself, and he says to her, who gave you this check? So she says, I don't know his name. I assume his name is on the check, but this is an elderly man. He said, no, it can't be. It can't be. She said, do you know what he looks like? She said, if you show me a picture, I can tell you. She says, look behind me. Do you see this picture right here? She says, that's him. That's the guy. He says, it can't be. That's my father. And he passed away 20 years ago. She says, he told me you weren't going to believe it. And he told me to have two witnesses. And they're waiting right here in the lobby. And they call the two witnesses. And he said, do you know what the man looked like? And they're trying to explain. And they said, and then he says, do you recognize this man? They're like, that's the guy. That's the guy. Send the two boys out. And the bank manager, the president of the bank says, let me tell you something. He says, my father came to me last night in a dream and told me that after he passed away, this bank president was not a religious individual. He had no merits. And you, he says to the woman, you had someone say Kaddish for him. And he knows, this he had in a dream, the son. He knows that you need to marry off your children. And he told me, I'm writing her a check, and you as my son, as the president of the bank, I want you to take money out of your account and give it to that woman. Because she did the job you didn't do. And the woman had that. Imagine that. It's like crazy, right? Spooky. I'll tell you another spooky story, right? So, my grandfather, of blessed memory, passed away in 2005. And there's an individual who wrote a book last year, not of my grandfather, but of my grandfather's former partner. My grandfather had a yeshiva that he started in 1948. And he hired someone to be the Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva. His name was Rabbi Moshe Shmuel Shapiro, a very, very brilliant Torah scholar. And together they ran this yeshiva for many, many years, about 35, 40 years they ran the yeshiva together. My grandfather was the spiritual leader, and he was the scholarly leader of the yeshiva. And my grandfather left the yeshiva that he started, I would say, not exactly in peaceful terms. Okay, not exactly in peaceful terms. But someone a year ago published a book of all of the letters of the Rosh Yeshiva that he wrote, many of the letters that he wrote. People would write him questions and he would write back letters, answers, and all of those letters were formulated in a beautiful book. One night, the author of the book gets a dream, has a dream. And who comes to him in a dream? My grandfather. And my grandfather tells him, I really, really, really like your book that you wrote about the Rosh Yeshiva, particularly one letter. In one letter, the Rosh Yeshiva writes that they didn't leave in an argument. They didn't leave the separation was not in a fight, because it really wasn't between them. It was other elements that were limiting the ability of success, and that's why my grandfather left. But either way, my grandfather was very, very impressed by this book. My grandfather asked in this individual's dream, "How much did it cost you to publish this book?" I think the amount was $3,000. My grandfather says, "Don't worry, I'm going to pay for it." Next day, someone knocks on this individual's door. Someone he's never seen before. Knocks on his door. It wasn't my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2005, right? And knocks on this individual's door and hands him an envelope. Turns around and leaves. And in that envelope was exactly that sum to cover the expense of publishing that book. Crazy. Right? Unbelievable. So, those are the stories for today. Story time is over. Now it's time to learn. So, I thought they were incredible stories. I thought I was really, this story with Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonnefeld He himself was one of those witnesses. He was one of those boys who was actually there. Right? Who became later the great Rabbi of Jerusalem. Unbelievably powerful. There's a number of lessons that we can learn from this story. Number one is that there are great powers in this world. And we sometimes think, I don't think that any of it has to do with these individuals. I think everything has to do with the Almighty. And sometimes we don't know how the Almighty works. And sometimes He works in very, very mysterious ways. We have no idea why we do certain things, why we're influenced by certain things, why we say certain things, why we do certain things. But we have no idea the closing of a circuit that is happening from something that our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, when I was in the former Soviet Union, I remember one of the students that we had, who was about 12 or 13 years old, had never had a bris. And we later on found out that he was a descendant of one of the greatest scholars of Europe. One of the greatest Torah scholars. He had the same last name. And we tracked it down. We did some work, and we found out that he was a descendant of an unbelievable sage from back, one of the great leaders. But you know what? 4, 5, 6 generations later, right? What was left? A great-great-grandchild who didn't have a bris. And then eventually he had a bris, and then he moved to Israel, and today he has a beautiful, beautiful Jewish family. But do you imagine the prayers that the great-grandparents had to ensure that our descendants will be influenced properly, that our descendants will have a bris, that our descendants will have access to Torah? That's in our prayer, by the way, every single morning. We say, V'ha'arevna Hashem Elokeinu. Say, Hashem, please make the Torah that we learn sweet. As divrei saroscha befinu, in our mouth, we should have sweetness from the Torah. U'befios amcha b'Yisrael, in the mouths of all the Jewish people, everyone. No one should think of Judaism as being, so difficult. It's so ancient. No, it should be sweet for them. For all the people, for all of our descendants to come, and for all of the descendants of the Jewish people, we should all know God and believe in God and follow the words of His Torah. That's one of the blessings we say every morning. It's a great thing that we have, a great ability to connect to much, much higher realms than we are accustomed to believing we are able to. Okay. Any questions on these stories? No questions? Doctor, you have a question? Thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
I know it's not Veterans Day, but I still appreciate it.
I'll send you my speech online.
Now, when I saw the signs about the speech. I want to.
They've got an archive.
I'm sorry that I wasn't there. All right. So till now we were starting to define what is this trait of zrizut. Zrizut, we said, is alacrity, or not wasting time, not pushing things off, not procrastinating. Okay. So now the Ramchal is going to tell us about the progressive ruin of the lazy Torah scholar described by the Midrash on this verse. Hine batchila eino ela machsir hatorach asher hayuro ulei. Consider, in the beginning, the lazy scholar simply slackens the exertion in study that would have been appropriate for him. Umizeh nimshach shelo yilmad batorah kechol hatzorech. As a result of this, he does not study Torah sufficiently. And because of the lack of sufficient study, when he does later come to study, he will lack proper understanding of what he studies. He seeks the explanation of a passage and does not find it. Now, if his ruin would end there, it would still be a great great enough damage. Ach, od misrabe v'holeches, but it continues to progressively worsen, and it gets worse and worse. Bima shebirtzoso al kol panim leishev haparsha v'haperikahu, for in his desire, despite his deficient learning, to nevertheless resolve the meaning of that passage or chapter that he does not properly understand, hine yegale ba panim shelo kehalacha, he will interpret it in a way that is contrary to halacha. Right? He will sit and rule tameh, something that is tahor, so he'll rule something defiled when it really is pure, and he'll rule something pure when it's truly something which is defiled. And he will thus destroy the truth and pervert it. V'yavor al hatakonos v'yifrotz esagdorim. He will then violate the rabbinic ordinances and breach the fences erected to protect Torah observance. He will breach the fence of Torah scholars. V'sofa kolaya kemishpat kol poretz goder. And his end will be destruction, as is the punishment for anyone who breaches a protective fence. He who breaches a fence will be bitten by a snake, it says. Okay, what does that mean? It refers to the sages, to the scholars, like a snake. It says you should be very careful of the bite of a scholar, of a Torah scholar, like you are of the bite of a poisonous snake. Right? Because it could be very, 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 when they strike, and it could be with horrific repercussions. But let's understand what he's saying here. He's saying, number one, if a person lazies around, what happens is, then you're not fully in. You kvetch. It's not. It doesn't really happen. And by it not happening, what happens is that when they do return back to their study of Torah, then it's not with a full firebrand. It's not with a full pack of energy. So you'll miss corners here and you'll miss points there, and what happens is at the end is that you end up ruling things that are wrong. That's one of the most terrible things, is that someone comes to ask, is something kosher? You're like, yeah, it's fine. That's not a problem. Yeah, it's okay. It's rabbinic, right? Or it's right, and people make light of what rabbinic law is. What even it gets to a point where they don't even care what Torah law is, right? It's a very, very serious allegation that the Ramchal is saying here, that one who studies with laziness will end up coming to do progressively worse things, because it's lacking that fire of Torah. It's lacking that fire of inspiration, of truth. Because it's like, whatever, it's like, I'm comfortable, leave me alone. Right? To study Torah, you got to be passionate. You got to be passionate for truth. You got to be passionate to connect to the Almighty. You got to really immerse yourself. It's not for casual study.
There's a saying in English: a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
That's right. They say that what's the saying that they say? Ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
Right. It happens to not be true, but if you know half of intelligence and all of ignorance, you're better off being ignorant, right? Right? Because knowing half would be devastating. So the Ramchal continues here, and he says as follows. The verse in Mishlei follows the parable of the lazy man's field, with a lesson to be learned, as cited above. Amar Shlomo, King Solomon said, Ve'echezer anochi ashes libi. When I saw this, I set my heart to understand. He's bonanti al hadavar hazeh. I contemplated this matter of laziness. V'ra'isi godel hora shebo. And I saw the great ruin in it. Shehu ke'eres ha'holech u'mispashet me'at me'at. It is like the poison that continuously spreads little by little throughout the body. Ve'ein pu'ulaso nikeres ad hamiso. And its effect is not noticed until it causes the death of its victim. V'zehu, and this is what is meant in the verse, me'at shenos uba mishalech reishecha umachsorcha ki'ish magen. A bit of sleep, and your poverty comes, and your lack is like an armed man. That is, what began as only one small amount of laziness, a bit of sleep, will ultimately result in total poverty and want, and your poverty and your poverty comes. So what happens is it starts with a little bit of laziness, and then it gets progressively worse, right? So what happens? Think of a student in school. So they're a little lazy. They don't want to do their work properly. So what happens is that they get not exactly the ideal score. So then that ideal score results is they can't get into the proper school they wanted to get to, because their scores didn't reflect it. And then it gets progressively worse because they were in a bad school, they couldn't get a good job. Right? Now, obviously, we have the hand of Hashem that's in everything. And Hashem I can tell you many people have never spent a day in school and are counting many billions of dollars, right? Yeah. Just because someone has schooling doesn't mean anything. That we know. But notwithstanding that, still, there is a certain natural way in which the world operates. There's always a normal, natural configuration to how this world works. And according to the normal circumstances of how things work, right, that's the result of laziness. It gets progressively worse. And when someone has the ability to do a mitzvah and they fail to do that mitzvah, so there's what they say is there's a time value to things. Let me give you an example. If I waste away an afternoon, okay, I have a Sunday afternoon, and instead of finishing up a project, I say, I'm just going to lazy around. I'm going to sit and watch the football game, and that's it. Now, again, if someone needs that time because they work hard and they need a break, so great. But if someone could have done something or needed to do something, they had a deadline and they didn't do it because they were just lazy and they just sat around and watched the football game, right? So now there's two things that they did. Number one is that they are now going to have to spend time later finishing up the project. There's also the time. Now, let's say someone did a sin. Now, watching football is not a sin necessarily, right? But if someone did a sin, then not only they're accountable for the sin, but they're also accountable for the mitzvah they could have done instead of that sin. Right? So there's a time loss that also needs to be calculated. Right? It's like when you put in your money in a bad investment, there's two problems. Number one is you lost your money. Number two is you could have made money in a good investment, right? Yeah. So there's two things, right? And when someone is lazy, that's the same thing, right? You're losing now and you're losing later when you're trying to play catch up, right? So it's a serious problem. Laziness can even distort a person's. Oh, sorry. Further elaboration on how laziness is as an impediment to spiritual attainment. Indeed, we see with our own eyes many times how a man's heart already knows what his obligation is, and most people know. You ask them, tell them, what are you obligated to do? They know right away. Unless they're really untruthful to themselves. And he already knows, he has already been convinced of what he needs to do to save his soul. And what is required of him by his Creator. Now remember, we discussed this so many times. Where God, why is it saying here exactly this specific term of Uma shechova olav mitzad boro, and what is required of him by his Creator? What does that mean? That means when you create something, you don't just create something, you create it with a purpose. created with a purpose, right? Let me ask you a question. I had actually a young one of my guests this Shabbos came with his son. His son, I believe, was 11 years old. So as I was walking them out, someone, either the father or the son, slipped out that the son is an atheist. You know how much I love atheists, right? So I said, "Oh wow, you're an atheist." I said, "So you don't believe in God? You know that there isn't a God?" She says, "Yeah, I think so." So I said to him, "Wow, that's incredible." I said, "Do you see?" He was walking outside the house. I said, "Do you see that little bench over there?" I said, "You know what that is?" He says, "Yeah, it's a bench." I said, "Do you know how it got there?" He says, "No." I said, "Guess, how did it get there?" He said, "Someone probably put it there." I'm like, "Are you crazy? No way, nobody put it there. It got there by itself." So he looks at me, "Are you ridiculous?" Right? I'm like, "Are you crazy?" I said, "You had to see. It just fell from the sky and it just showed up." Right?
Good.
See, he's looking at me a little confused. I'm like, you don't believe me that this chair just showed up? It fell from manna from heaven? He says, "No, I don't believe it. It doesn't just happen like that." I said, "And that's a bench. How about the sophisticated human being? You think that just happened? That's just evolution? You think, look at a tree, look at a fruit, look at a leaf, look at the perfection of a sunset, a sunrise, and that just happened by itself? Are you out of your mind? Nothing just happens. And God doesn't just create things. He creates things for a purpose. When God gives us life, when He gives us potential, when He gives us talents and abilities, do you know what God is really doing? God is telling you, "I believe in you, and I know what you can accomplish with this. That's why I'm giving you those talents. That's why I'm giving you those skills, because I know what you're capable of." Me? Who am I? I'm a nobody. What do you mean you're a nobody? God thinks you're not a nobody, which is why He gave you many, many talents. And this is what the Ramchal is telling us right here. He says, "Indeed, we see that with our own eyes many, many times, how a man's heart already knows what his obligation is, and he has already been convinced of what he needs to do to save his soul." You're given those gifts already. God gave you the talents you have, not so that you can show off. By the way, that's the true definition of arrogance. Arrogance is when, it's like, imagine this, right? A kid gets a gift from his dad, and he goes around showing off to all his friends how amazing he is, right? Well, it's not yours; it's your father's. So what do you think such a big shot? Or your uncles or whatever, right? Okay, by association, it makes me great. Okay, fine, but you're nothing, right? Your father might be something, right? Okay. The Almighty knows what He gave us. Let's say, David, I know you're a very fast runner. Okay, so imagine you ran the Olympics, or you ran with the horses, right on the track. You ran with the horses and you beat them, right? And then you pick up your arms, it's like, yes, victory, me, I'm the fastest runner in the world, right? You know the problem with that? The problem with that is
Somebody's always faster.
Is that the Almighty, who really gave you that skill and who gave you that ability?
Oh, man, sir.
Right? The Almighty gave you that ability. The Almighty gave you that skin, that skill, right? The Almighty gave you that skill that is giving you the ability to succeed in that way, right? And that's why the humble people, what they do is, it's not that they say, "No, I'm not talented, I'm not gifted." They say, "But you know what? I am gifted, but I understand that it's a responsibility that God gave me. It's a responsibility that God gave me." Right? When God gives you a talent, you better use it properly. He gave it to you so that you can enjoy and benefit, absolutely. but without forgetting where the gift is from. That's why it says, Sheker hachein, vehevel hayofi. Chen, grace, beauty, is false, it's vain. You know why? What did you do to earn that? Nothing. Right? You either have the looks or you don't have the looks. God gave it to you or didn't. What did you do for it? You're walking around like you're Miss Universe or something, right? Like you did something for it. You did nothing. You just showed up. Right? Being born is not really a great virtue.
Yeah, but
right?
But if you have athletic ability, you have to work hard at it to hone it and use it.
Most people, not all. Some people have it as a gift, as a total gift. And even those who do have to hone it, they were given some skill,
Yeah.
some
you have
talent.
to appreciate
You're
what
given
God gave you,
intelligence,
you
you're given a
stop
mind, you're given, right? Someone who's a great composer, someone who's a great, right? Anyone here compose songs, right? Anyone here ever wonder? I remember I've asked several composers. I said to them, how do you do it? I would love to compose a song. I was like, how do you do it? Like, what do you mean? Just sit down they don't understand the challenge that us non-composers have, right? They just sit down and they sit with the piano and boom, they pop out songs, right? It's amazing. That's a gift that they have, and it's a responsibility that they have. There's actually a story in the Talmud. Maybe we'll do this at the Thinking Talmudist this week, maybe, right? But there were two families that were gifted with special talents in the times of the temple. One family was gifted with incredible talent of singing. They sang so beautifully. And wherever they went, people asked them, oh, can you sing? Can you sing for us? And the other family had a great talent and skill in baking special bread, the show bread that was necessary for the temple. They had fresh bread from before Shabbos. It stayed warm and fresh till the following Shabbos, where they would be replaced. But again, they had a special skill, a special talent in knowing how to do it. And both families were approached by people asking, how do we do it? Or can you do it for us? And the family who baked would always tell people, here's the recipe, this is what you do, you put this much water and this much yeast and this much flour and this much, tell them exactly what to do. And the family who sang so beautifully, they were like, no. Special occasions, with the family, when we're at the temple, we're singing, but you enjoy the singing? It's not for, no. Why did God give it to you? Why did God give it to you? He gave it to you to hold it to yourself? No, He gave it to you to share it with the world. You not sharing it, family was wiped out. It was wiped out. You were given a talent and you wasted it. Now, I don't know if it actually means that they died or that their talents were taken away from them. Right? Either way, what they were famous for wasn't around anymore. Either they lost that talent or they were actually physically dead. But regardless, I think the message is very, very important. I think it's incredibly, daunting for us to imagine that we have such an important task and responsibility in front of us. It really is a big responsibility. So, let's continue here. So a person knows what is required of him by his Creator. Nevertheless, he will leave all of this undone. Why? Because he's lazy. Not for lack of recognizing the obligation. Not for any other reason. For no other reason other than that the sluggishness born of his laziness prevails over him. And he therefore says to himself, Ochal kim'ah, I will first eat a bit, O ishan kim'ah, or I will sleep a bit, O kasha alai latzes mi beisi, or it is difficult for me to leave my house, to go to prayer, to study, because Poshatiti kutanti echachoel b'sheno. I have already taken off my robe. How can I don it again? Chama aza ba'olam, or because it's very, very hot outside, right? Hakara rabo aksham, or it's extremely cold, or it's very, very rainy. B'chol shar ha'am tolos va'atoanos al piha atzelim molehem mehen, or any of the other excuses and pretexts with which the mouths of lazy people are filled. Oh, the excuses. Oh, the excuses. I can tell you, thank God we're here 15 years in Houston, and the excuses I've heard why people can't learn, why people can't come for Shabbos, why people can't do many, many things. Oh, what a beautiful people we are, right? So
excuses.
creative. What's that? A book of excuses, exactly. Right. Oh, it's amazing. No, but you know what I always say to my wife when I hear like a really like pathetically cute, excuse, like one that's like doesn't carry any weight. I'm like, look how precious the Jewish people are. Look how precious. The mitzvah of Shabbos is so precious. To just join us for a meal, it's a free meal. Just come sit and enjoy a good meal. My neighbor's dog has a sitter that, come on, really? Come on. And I need to look after the sitter to make sure she's not going to be lonely. So, what? Imagine how much the Yetzer Hara is worried that someone will experience a single mitzvah. That he's ready to come up with the craziest, ridiculous excuses in the world just so you don't do one mitzvah. That's how precious the Jewish people are. I'm not saying it in a derogatory way. I'm not saying it facetiously. I'm saying it genuinely. The mitzvah is so powerful that the Yetzer Hara dreads it. He says, you know what, whatever you want. You know what, tomorrow I think there's a marathon in New York, and I'm afraid I'm coming down with a cold. And, what? Like, right, you hear that? Does that make sense, that excuse? I've heard worse. Yeah, I really want to watch it. It means a lot to me. I'm afraid I'm going to be tired. And it's like the craziest things. Like, how do you even think of that? Right? Ramchal tells us we'll come up with any excuse in the world. Mm-hmm. You know why? It's laziness is very powerful. Laziness has such an incredible power. Yes?
Does non-belief clarified as laziness?
I say that the whole movement of atheism is laziness. Mm-hmm. Right? Do you think that most atheists sat and went through like, you know what? Let's learn Genesis. Let's study the words of creation. Let's understand what happens throughout the Torah. You know what? In conclusion, my summary is that I'm an atheist. No, that's not what happens. Most of these people watch a YouTube video, like, oh, that's right. Of course, there's no God. It's YouTube, right? Or a New York Times article, so it has to be true, right? Or right?
Posting on Facebook.
Right, or it's a posting on Facebook, so for sure it has to be true, right? I mean, it's an amazing thing because we are living today in a culture and an era of what we know is, in Hebrew they call it fake news, right? That's what they call it in Hebrew.
I mean, I was having an argument with somebody, and I said, well, who do you think created all this? Oh, Mother Nature.
Mother Nature, yeah.
Who's Mother Nature?
Mother Nature is very capable. It's amazing, right? But it really is an amazing. No, but it's because you don't be upset at those people. Just have love for them. You have to understand that it's that Yetzer Hara that's so powerful. It's saying, oh, I'm terrified. If this guy starts getting excited about Torah, this person gets excited about Hashem, you know what's going to happen? Right? They're going to turn over their whole life to change their kitchen, to change their eating habits to kosher, to changing the way they observe their Shabbos, to changing everything. I don't want that. It's easier, it's more attractive. God's going to make it a very special thing today for people to be atheists, because it's like, oh, it must be really intellectual, right? Professor, right? It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
They say often that we who have such a deep religious,
that we use it as a crutch.
Well, religion.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like,
religion.
well, a crutch for what?
You know, it's funny because I've heard from people over the years, not too many times, but I heard enough times for it to annoy me, where they say, you know, I have a nephew who's going through a crisis. I think he needs religion. Right, like the religion is for the handicapped and the ill,
Yeah.
right? Those who are sick. God forbid, religion is for everyone. Connect. By the way, Judaism is not a religion. We know that,
Well,
right?
yeah.
But it's a relationship with the Almighty. Everyone needs a relationship, not only when you're not doing well, not only when you're
That's right.
after a bad divorce and you're all shooken up. And what are you going to do? Oh, religion. That's your solution. No, it's just it's what we need in every point in our life. This is what we need. We need to have a connection. We need a guide. Right? It's not for the crazies. Right? It's for the most intelligent. Right? You know, I you know what? Ed and Eric, right, were with me on our trip to Israel. And we met some of the greatest, brightest Torah scholars. I mean, you could take any Einstein of our generation, or Einstein himself, and put them next to these Torah scholars, and they would eat them up alive and spit them out, right? I'm telling you, talking about the sharpest minds on planet Earth are those who study Torah. You're uncomfortable with that?
No.
No, it's okay. You can
Just
tell me if
have
you're...
a little twitch,
and then you can tell me. You can tell me, please. We're open here. We're a family.
Well.
You're like, Rabbi, you're crazy.
No,
Get out of your mind.
But you have said before in your class that I've gone to for 38 years that if you wanted to go, to a surgeon, go to the learned rabbi instead, because he'll be able to explain how to give you the surgery better. than the doctor.
No. That's not what I'm saying. No. You have no.
No, wait. That one there is.
Whoa. Let's step back. The Talmud tells us, and we know this, that Torah b'goyim al tamin, Chachma b'goyim tamin. If someone tells you there's Torah by the non-Jews, don't believe them. If someone says there's wisdom by the non-Jews, believe him. Right? The non-Jews, the Gentiles, have wisdom. They have tremendous wisdom. I don't think it was a rabbi who figured out how to build a 110-story building. Right? I don't think it was a rabbi. Right? But, so the wisdom there is, but Torah there isn't. Torah there isn't by non-Jews.
So why do you feel that Torah scholars have more on the ball than geniuses? What makes you think that?
Well, it happens to be most Torah scholars are geniuses. Okay, so let me answer your question. It's very simple, because what by the way, you know that Harvard University, Yale University, they joyfully accept students who learn Talmud in yeshiva into their law schools.
Oh,
You know why?
Wow. Mhm.
You know why? Because they have the absolute sharpest minds.
Yeah.
If you study reasoning in Talmud, which by the way we have every Friday at 12 o'clock here at the Torch Center, right? You see, we're just learning the fun. It's all fun, but that we learn the non-challenging Talmud, and we see the brilliance, right? Every single week, someone says like, "Wow," and that blew my mind. We have that almost every week, where someone says after the Thinking Talmudist series, like, "Wow, this was incredible." And those are the easy ones. And you get to the more difficult ones, and you're like, the brilliance, the way it's sharp. It's like you take a knife, right, that's dull. How do you sharpen it? You take another knife that's dull, and you sharpen them both. Right? That's what happens through the study of Talmud. Talmud sharpens even the weakest minds. Right? That's just, so you have to understand that there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. my son.
There is nothing like it maybe spiritually. Is there nothing like it intellectually? Are you saying they're both
Both, absolutely,
intertwined?
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, the country, other than Israel, the country that studies Talmud most is
South Korea.
South Korea.
Koreans.
There's not a lot of Jews in South Korea.
Well, there's none, but yeah,
Yeah.
but it really is. It really is incredible, and you should just know, it's our Torah. It belongs to each and every one of us, right? The Torah itself says, "Morasha Kehilat Yaakov." The inheritance doesn't belong to Moses. It doesn't belong to Aaron. It doesn't belong to the leaders of the tribes. It belongs to each and every one of us. Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. This is a verse in the end of Deuteronomy. It's our inheritance. It belongs to us. Right? Feel proud. Feel the joy. Right? I guarantee you. You take any scientist. You take any professor. Right? You put him in a room full of Talmud scholars. Right? They'll feel like a child. The brilliance of the Talmud, the brilliance of the Torah. Right? Now, I'm not here to knock anyone. I'm not here to belittle anyone. But the idea is I'm trying to make you arrogant. All right? I'm trying to make you feel proud of your own Torah. It's yours. What a prized possession we have. All right? So he said like this. והנה אנחנו רואים בעינינו כמה וכמה פעמים שכבר ליבו של אדם יודע מה חובתו. Oh, we're going back to the beginning of that. 1 second. How a man's heart already knows what his obligation is, and he has already been convinced of what he needs to do to save his soul, and what is required of him by his Creator. Nevertheless, he will leave all of this undone. Not for the lack of recognizing that obligation, nor for any other reason, other than that the sluggishness born of his laziness prevails over him. V'harei hu omer, and he therefore says to himself, ochel kim'a, I will eat a little bit. O ishan kim'a, or I'll sleep first a little bit. O kashal alai lotes bebeisi, it's difficult for me to leave my home, right, to go pray or to study. Because I've already taken off my robe. I just got undressed. You want me to get redressed? Right? How can I done it again? Because it is very hot outside. Hakara Rabba Akshamor, it is extremely cold. Or it is very rainy. Vikvar Sha'ar Ha'am Talos V'atoanos Asher or any of the other excuses and pretexts with which the mouths of lazy people are filled. Meanwhile, the Torah is left unstudied, and the divine service is neglected, and the person effectively abandons his Creator. And this is what King Solomon said, Omer, in Ecclesiastes 10:18, Ba'atzaltayim yimach hamikoreh uveshiflus yadayim yidlof habayis. Through laziness the ceiling sags, and through idleness of the hands the house leaks. Right? We can understand, thinking a little bit how that makes sense. But if you look over here on the bottom, number 25, one does not have to take any action to destroy the house. If he simply fails to maintain it, it will fall into despair and collapse on its own. It is the same with one's spiritual edifice. All you have to do is lazy around, and that spiritual edifice will collapse on its own. Laziness does not merely prevent it from expanding. Laziness causes its decay and ultimately its ruin. Okay? Ramchal is punching us here in the gut. He's saying, get to work, buddy. Right? You got work to do. Right? Don't lazy around. We have things to accomplish. We need to get things done. We don't have time for laziness. We don't have time for stories. Get it done. You can do it. You're here for a job. Excuses won't help. Also, you know what? One of the funny excuses that we used to give as kids for whatever it is that we didn't want to do, we would say, "Well, nobody's doing it. I'm just like everybody else."
Yeah.
Right? It's like, why should I be different? My father would always say to us that in the world to come, we stand in judgment in front of the Almighty, alone. So when you come to judgment and you say, "Well, I was acting like everybody else was acting," like everyone else. Who's everyone else? They're all gone. You're there alone. Person needs to remember that we're held accountable to what our capabilities are, not what everybody else is. We're held accountable for what the talents and skills that God gave us as individuals and aren't living up to. God will never ask you, why weren't you like your neighbor? Why weren't you like your sibling or like your parent or like your child? God's going to only say, why weren't you like you? This is who you were supposed to be. Why didn't you become you? That's the frightening thing. And that someone who's lazy has a very difficult time getting to that. Laziness can even distort a person's Laziness can even distort a person's thought process. However, if you were to confront and ask the lazy person to explain his idle ways, he will come back to you with many statements of the sages. He'll bring you verses from the Midrash, he'll bring you from wherever, and verses from scripture, and logical arguments, and all of which instruct him according to his perverse reasoning. To make it easy for him and to leave himself in the comfort of his laziness. So we like our laziness. We like being in our laziness state. I don't have to do anything. Fine, life's great. Right? I don't need to get anything done. Right? We're very comfortable with that. V'hu einenu roeh min hata'anos hahem v'hata'amim hahem noldim lo mipnei shikol dato. And he does not see that those spurious arguments and reasons are not born of his sound judgment. Rather, the source from which they flew is his laziness. You want to know where it comes from? Well, these excuses, deep down, it's all laziness. For some reason, when it's the morning that the child is going to Six Flags, they have no problem waking up in the morning.
Yeah, right.
But when it's the morning that they have to get up for school, oh, I'm so tired. Right? Or the test. Or they have to close that deal they're very excited they're going to make a whole bunch of money on. Right? Jump out of bed so I can't sleep at night. Right? But when it comes to taking our kid to the softball game, I don't know, I'm so tired, I can't. Right? Not feeling well. My wife sent me a message. It says, only a woman who went through childbirth without an epidural can understand a man with a cold.
Oh, yeah, well.
That's good.
Right? We fall apart. Right.
Indeed.
Dave, you can laugh. It's funny. It's funny.
That's what I said. What is it? If it were left up to men, there wouldn't be any children.
That's right. Right. There wouldn't be any children.
That's why the men are obligated to have children. Right?
They had to give
You know what's
birth
an
to
amazing
them.
thing? A man has to get married, and a man has to have children. A woman does not have to get married according to the Torah, and a woman does not have to have children. Ironically, who wants to get married? Women.
Yeah.
Men are like, hey, he's perfect as is. I don't know why we need to get married. Why ruin this party, right? Right? And children, same thing. Women want to have children. Men are like, okay, if you want, I guess. But I don't know why this is necessary, right? Life is perfect, right? You understand? men need that obligation. And now people ask why men are obligated to go to shul and daven 3 times a day. Why? Right? We understand that men need to have that structure. Men need to have those obligations to get them there. Otherwise, they're crazy. All right. What?
They're lost.
Yeah, they're lost. Exactly. Let's just finish off this paragraph here. Asher behiyosa he goveres bo, which as it grows ever stronger within him. We're talking about that laziness. Mata dato v'sichla al hata'anos ha'ele, sways his judgment and intellect to believe these arguments of really which started as his laziness. Right? Really, I was too lazy. I didn't want to do it. Then I say, you know what? It's really crazy that you even want to do this. You know that you're really crazy, right? You know, you shouldn't really, right? It's like running the marathon, right? So first we say, I'm going to do it, and then we're like not so inspired anymore. So we're like, you know what? We're really lazy, right? So we, you know what? Marathon's really for kooks anyway, right? And we start justifying our laziness, but really the only reason we didn't do it is because we were lazy, right? Right? Who's jogging with me? By the way, I'm scheduled to be jogging the marathon in Jerusalem in March. Anyone joining me?
This March?
2022?
2020. Yeah, 2020, in a few months.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, you going to join me?
Oh, no.
It's easier to do the one in Houston. It's on flat ground.
I know, in Israel it's going to be up and down hills. I can't wait. Either way, you'll all be part of my team. You'll get my code. You'll be able to follow where I'm at.
Yeah.
All right? Hopefully, with good health, I'll be able to do it. So that he does not, so he comes up with these arguments and belief systems so that he does not heed the voice of the wise and the people with correct perception. This tendency of the lazy person to reject the opinion of the wise in favor of his own warped perception is what Shlomo, King Solomon, means when he cries out and says, Chacham otzel be'enov mishiva mishivei tam. The lazy one is wiser in his own eyes than 7 who answer sensibly. Ki ha'atzla einenu manachas lo sheyeh afilu chash l'divrei hamochichim oso. For his laziness does not allow him to even consider that there might be some validity to the words of those who rebuke him. Elo yachshov hakol l'toim v'shotim. Rather, he considers all of them to be misguided and fools. Ve'hu levado chacham. And he thinks that only he is wise. Right? That is the danger of laziness. That one gets so warped in the way they think that they're like, I'm the only wise person here. Mm-hmm. I'm the only one who understands anyway. Right? And it's a very, very, very terrible thing that for someone to be delusional enough to think that all of those excuses don't come and stem from true laziness. So, my dear friends, I want to remind you a few things. Firstly, the 22nd of December, we're having Rabbi Mizrahi here. I'm not guaranteeing a sellout crowd, but I'm guaranteeing a sellout crowd. Okay? Okay. I'm serious. If you want to join now. Please go to the website. Please get your tickets. Make sure you come. We really want you to be there. It's going to be a very, very special event, December 22nd. Now, it's also the first night of Hanukkah. We're going to have your special Hanukkah refreshments, and we're going to have the Hanukkah menorah lighting here. It's going to be at 7 o'clock with Rabbi Mizrahi. I actually had an individual who sent an email where he said, he wrote to Rabbi Mizrahi saying he became Shomer Shabbos a few years ago, and he's been living outside of a community someplace outside of Houston. He said he was always looking forward to moving to a bigger city that has more Jews. Finally, he was able to move to Houston a few weeks ago. He says this is going to be the first year that he has, so now it's the first time he has a kosher kitchen, and et cetera, and it's going to be the first Hanukkah he's able to light menorah in the community, and not only that, he's going to be lighting it with Rabbi Mizrahi. He's very excited about that. So, thank God, attendance is up, and it's going to fill up, so please join us. Get your tickets, December 22nd, Sunday. I look forward to seeing all y'all there. Have a terrific a remarkable, safe, delicious evening, everyone. And don't forget to drive safely. And you know what? Imagine this. Do you know how many sales are going on right now that all of you are missing out on? Right? You know that in Israel on Black Friday, right? They have Black Friday in Israel. Do you know that on Black Friday they made 12,500 sales per minute in Israel?
Wow.
Now, on Amazon they were making 12,500 sales per second. Right? It's true. And guess what?
But
No sales since this class started. Right? Exactly. It's unbelievable. We got 100% off. Right? On all the things that we didn't need and we didn't buy during this class. So I'm very proud of you. Kol hakavod, everyone. Have a terrific evening. Thank you so much. Have a good night.